What's going on? Thanks for checking out my next video on how to draw muscles. And also don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't. Now I'd also like to give a shout out and thank you to all the subscribers that have helped the channel grow and let me continue to keep making content like this. Big thank you for that. Now this time I'm going to be drawing sitting poses, and for the sitting poses, it's not that hard. You're basically doing the shapes the same as you're doing poses before, like in my previous videos when you're drawing poses. And just like my previous videos, I'm using Figurosity, and I have links below if you want to check that out also. And when I'm drawing these poses, they're mostly practice. You're not really worrying about, you're focusing on anatomy, but not as much. You're kind of you're practicing, you're throwing the shapes down, you're trying to figure out where you're going to go with the shapes so that you can get the pose down correctly. And right now I'm looking at the picture and I'm trying to figure out where to place everything. And when I'm using these shapes, I'm trying to use the shapes to kind of analyze and figure out where everything's going to go, using the circles to figure out and measure where the leg is going to go. And you see right now when I'm doing the leg, when I'm doing the circle shapes, especially for the elbows and the knees, I'm taking those circles and I'm adding curves over the circle. And when you add the curves over the circle, creating the cylinder, you kind of make a foreshortened shape. It's kind of an easier way to foreshorten the shape, and it tricks your eye to make you think that the shape is foreshortened, but it's kind of an easier way to figure out how to foreshorten the shape if you have trouble foreshortening like the arms or foreshortening the legs and things like that. And creating the circle around the cylinder and then making a curve to form that second cylinder for the next shape is like an easier way of making yourself figure out how to foreshorten that area. So right now I'm adding in the inks, just not really focus too much on detail, just trying to lay down the muscles, putting in where the shoulder is, and kind of following the structure of the arm. When the arm is, depending on what position the arm is going in or facing, the muscle will change and stretch depending on where that part of the body shape is going to go. I'm detailing the hand, just throwing it in there, not really focusing too much on detailing it. Getting the legs. Usually sometimes another easier way of figuring out how to place a figure onto a platform or onto a seat, as this picture is showing, he's sitting onto something. Sometimes you can draw the waist first and then go from the waist up to the head, and a majority of people will usually draw the head and go down, but there's a lot of different methods to figuring out where to place the figure or the weight of the figure and getting the figure on the page pretty quickly. I'm just putting in this, just adding in the chair. Didn't really have to add the box part, but I just wanted to put it in there. Now for this one, this female figure is sitting down, but out of top-down view angle, and it's kind of tricky doing those, but when you know where the shape's going to go and how to place the shapes down, it's easy to figure out, especially when you're adding a lot of structure lines and you're trying to just a little perspective using it also. So I'm adding a line in the middle of the chest to figure out where the line is going to go, adding a cylinder for the arm so I know where the arm is placed. And I'm always putting the circles where the elbows are and circles where the knees are to kind of get a general idea of where those are going to go. That's why when I drew the arm, I kind of stopped it midway so I could figure out where the leg is going to go first, and then later on add the other section. And the majority of the time I don't usually do it that way, where I'm doing half the arm or half the leg. It's only a method I use sometimes when I'm drawing a pose or drawing from a pose. And a lot of times when drawing a pose is also good to draw from life also, so you can go in the mirror, pose. You can use your cell phone and pose. And a lot of artists, a lot of the times, especially when they're drawing comics or even in animation, they're always drawing from poses. Even I know Disney movies, when they're figuring out animation for specific things like animals or things like that, they'll have the animals in the room. I think when they made The Lion King, they had to draw the movements of an actual lion. So it's always good to have reference so you'll know how to pose things in different positions rather than drawing straight from your head. If you draw straight from your head, you're not going to really know how that person's going to pose, because you're guessing how it's going to pose without actually knowing where the joints are going to go and what positions or how far the person's body can actually stretch. So right now I'm inking it, adding in the rest of the muscles in this, detailing it a little bit more. Adding in some of the detail on the arms, trying to get the shoulder in there. I guess you could switch to pen and pencil. So you do pencil, then switch to pen, and just see how comfortable you get, just to kind of practice doing that. Because a lot of times I like to just switch it over real quick, just because I just like to get used to doing a lot more ink stuff, to kind of get used to doing it without messing up. Even though it's a practice phase, so when I'm practicing, you're not really worried about messing up with it. So I'm just going with the flow, trying to just be comfortable. Adding in the leg, getting the feet in there, getting the toes. Sometimes when I add feet, a lot of times I'll do boxes sometimes if I just want to do it quickly, but I decided to just put the toes in. Get that knee. Get that forearm in there. Trying to get a lot of the muscle joints or muscle structures. Now for this one, the pose is it's like a forward view or 1-point perspective, more or less. I'm trying to get the head in there first, then making the shoulder. Now the shoulder is hidden behind the head, so that's why I added that circle there. Sometimes I'll add a circle just so I know where the shoulder is, and I'll know where to make that oval shape for the rest of the body. It's kind of an easier way to figure out the position of the figure. And now right now I'm adding in the cylinder for the arm. I threw in a circle in there for the elbow, so I know where the elbow is going to stop, and start adding the other shapes. That's why I add the circle in first, right there for the leg, because I wanted to measure the circle from the knee to the shoulder from the picture to see how far to make it when I'm adding in the rest of the shapes. I'm adding the rest of the leg. Other knee. And sometimes when you're drawing a knee, and if the knee is hidden behind another shape, you can have the circle overlap, or just draw the whole circle out if you have a hard time figuring out where to place it. I already know where the circle's going to go. That's why I only did part of the circle, but you can just put the whole circle all the way through and just make it where the other part of the circle that's showing through the leg, just make it a little bit lighter so that you won't get too distracted or get confused on where the shapes are going. So right now I'm just darkening up some of the areas. Tell me a little bit more when I'm adding in the inks into the to throw the muscles on. And I'm just going to darken it up and add in some more muscle detail. And usually when you're adding muscles on the female figure, you're not getting too extreme with the muscles, because I mean, it's a female body, and the female body is not going to show muscles like that unless it's like a extremely fit, like muscular female that's just consistently, she's probably just been lifting weights for like forever, for her body to just get super lean to the point where she's just super muscular, like a guy muscles. But that's usually extremely rare. So you want to be not too extreme with the muscles when you're drawing it on a female body compared to the male body. Or else you would just be basically drawing it'll look like a skinny muscular man pretty much. I'm adding the feet. Just finishing it off. Now this one, I sped up a little bit more because I'm getting in the general idea of the male shape. And a cylinder for the arms, circles for the hands. The reason why I sped up a little bit more is because this one I detailed it a little bit more, since this is the last pose, and this one I added in the details, and then later on I'm going to add some shadows into it. So right now I'm inking it up, adding in the details for the muscles. So I'm going to add in a little more detail, not as much, but just a little bit more than the other ones I've done. Detail a little bit more, adding his hand in there. There's the foot. Try to throw in as much as I can, so I know where to start putting the shading. Just like all my other shadings, I always go in with a base shade first, and then the base shade is always lighter shade. And lighter shade, I can just, sometimes with light shade I can go crazy with it and following where I think the shadow's going to go, and then as I'm gradually detailing it, I'll start going darker and darker. But within that light shade, sometimes I'll shade the whole thing a light color and then start adding in darker colors as I go along. This time, for this particular one, I decided to not add so much of lighter shade because I'm not making a detailed piece. It's more I'm just doing it for fun, just to throw shade in there. Adding more detail on the foot. All right, but that's it for this video. If you want to see more or enjoy more content like this, hit the like button, subscribe. All right, take care.